Okay, gang, today we're going to be solving some very tricky equations, and I'm going to show you some properties that you can use to help you solve these equations. So you've probably been pretty familiar with solving equations from last year, but now we're going to name the steps and what properties you're using to complete each steps. And I'm going to show you that there are multiple ways to solve an equation. There's not just one straightforward way. So solving equations, I'm going to be doing all the odds with you in today's notes on lesson 1, and then you're going to do the evens on your own. So here are the properties you're going to be using. Many properties allow us to balance and eventually find the solutions to equations. These properties include the distributive property, which is used when a number outside the parentheses is multiplied by all the terms inside the parentheses. So you guys should be familiar with this from last year. One way you see the distributive property is if you have something like 2 times 3x minus 5, and you get 2 times 3x is 6x, and 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. So that would be 6x minus 10. You could see it with a fraction out front, so something like 1/2 of 10x minus 16. Distribute the 1/2. 1/2 times 10x equals 5x. 1/2 times 16 is going to be 8. We keep the minus sign, so that would be 5x minus 8. You could see it with a fraction like 3/4, and I'm going to make it negative 3/4, and then inside something like 12x plus 20. Now, there's a real quick way to multiply by a fraction. I know some of you guys know how to use your calculator to do that. I'm going to show you an even quicker way. If you do negative 3/4 times 12, first of all, we know that's going to be a negative. Then 12 divided by 4 is 3. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. Keep the x. Distributing again, negative 3/4 of 20 is going to make it negative. 20 divided by 4 is 5, times 3 is 15. So that would be negative 15. So when you're multiplying by a fraction, the real quick way to do it, if the whole number you have is divisible by the denominator, is to divide first by the denominator, dd, and then multiply by the numerator. Oh, go back. Another property is the substitution property of equality, which is used when terms can be combined to simplify an expression or equation, which results in substituting the like terms with their sum or differences. So for example, if you have 3x minus 10x in an equation, that can be switched to negative 7x. If you have negative 12x plus 20x, that can be changed to positive 8x. If you have constant terms like 12 minus 17, then that can be substituted for negative 5. So it's just putting together the like terms. Then the addition property of equality is used when a number is added to each side of the equation. So when you add something to both sides of an equation to balance it, you're using the addition property of equality. Similarly, the subtraction property of equality is used when a number is subtracted from each side of the equation. So again, if you're subtracting something from both sides to balance the equation and to simplify it, that's the subtraction property of equality. And then last is the multiplication property of equality, and that's used when each side of an equation is multiplied by a number. And sometimes when it's divided, you're kind of using that inverse operation. So something like 1/3 of x equals 8. The reciprocal of 1/3 would be 3, so you're multiplying by 3. So x is 24. That is the multiplication property of equality. You could even see that with, go back, something like 2 times 5x minus 10 equals 40. You could divide by 2 first, which is the same as multiplying by 1/2. And again, you're using the multiplication property of equality because you're multiplying each side by something in order to simplify the equation. All right, so let's take a look at the odd problems together. First one, very, very simple. You all should remember how to do something like this. We start by distributing the 2. We get 2x minus 2 equals 12. Then that's the distributive property. Then you're going to add 2 to both sides. That's the addition property. Which gives me 2x equals 14. Then we divide by 2 or multiply by a half using the multiplication property. Getting an answer of x equals 7. So that's a very simple equation. That's one way to do it. I could have instead done 2 times x minus 1 equals 12. And instead of doing the distributive property first, I could have divided by 2 first and used the multiplication property, getting x minus 1 equals 6. Then added 1 and gotten, again, x equals 7. Okay, so it's up to you to decide which way you want to do it. If you divide both sides first, it is actually a little bit shorter, okay, but you can only do that if your problem looks like this, where you only have a number being multiplied by parentheses. If there was something else outside those parentheses, it wouldn't work, and we'll see that again later. All right, so there's the first odd. Let's take a look at the next one. Okay, so number 3, notice how now we have negative 45, what looks like the solution or the answer on the left-hand side instead of the right-hand side. That is okay. We don't have to have it on the other way or switched around. It can be set up either way, and you have to know how to deal with it either way. So let's use the trick we saw before. Since we just have negative 5 times 2x plus 1, instead of distributing the negative 5, since there's nothing like at plus 20 on the end here, I can just right away divide this whole thing by negative 5, which would be the same as multiplying by negative 1/5. So I'm using the multiplication property of equality. I'm going to abbreviate multiprop, multiplication property. All right, by doing that, I get 9 equals 2x plus 1, because negative 5 over negative 5 is just 1, so it cancels out. Now I can use the subtraction property of equality, subtract 1 on both sides. Giving me 8 equals 2x. Then I'm going to divide by 2, which is again multiplying by a half, so it's the multiplication property again. And I get x equals 4. Final answer, which we call the solution to the equation. And if I had done it the other way, just to show you, negative 45 equals negative 5 times 2x plus 1, and distributed first, I should get the same answer. So now I'm using the distributive property first. I get negative 45 equals negative 10x minus 5. Then I add 5 to both sides. I get negative 40 equals negative 10x. Then divide by negative 10. And look at that, same answer, x equals 4. So it's up to you to use the way that you are more comfortable with. Okay, on to number 5. All right, so now we have a fraction. We still only have something being multiplied by parentheses, nothing else outside those parentheses. So we can use that same trick once again, or we can distribute. Since we have some bigger numbers here, I'm going to distribute first. Since I'm multiplying by a fraction, it will make those numbers a little bit smaller. A third of 18 is like dividing by 3. So 18 divided by 3 is 6. We get 6x. Then a third of 45, again, is like dividing by 3. Bring down the minus sign since this is a positive that we're multiplying by. And 45 divided by 3 is 15, equals negative 75. So we started with the distributive property. Next, we're going to add 15 to both sides to balance the equation. When I say both sides, I mean both sides of the equal sign. If it helps, you can draw that line down. So now I get 6x equals, now it's really important that you're very savvy with your integer numbers. If you're not, use a calculator so you don't make a mistake. When you have negative 75 and you're adding 15, you have different signs. So you're going to calculate the difference. When I say difference, it's like subtracting. So think of it as 75 minus 15, which gives you 60. But since negative 75 is larger, okay, further away from 0, I'm going to keep the negative 6, make it negative, and make it negative 60. Then I divide by 6, and x equals negative 10, because a negative divided by a positive is a negative. Now let me just go through because I didn't add in my properties here. This here, I use the addition property of equality. And this here, again, I know it looks like it should just say division, but it's the multiplication property of equality, because dividing by 6 is the same as multiplying by 1/6. Okay, so there's number 5. We have 2 more odds to go. Number 7, all right, now we don't have any parentheses. We just have a bunch of terms on the left-hand side that could be put together. So we have 2x and negative 5x. We're going to start by simplifying it by putting those together. 2x minus 5x is negative 3x. And then I have positive 6 and negative 10. 6 minus 10 is negative 4. So I have negative 3x minus 4 equals 11. And I got that by using the substitution property of equality. To me, it looks like I'm simplifying, but really what I'm doing is substituting 2x minus 5x with negative 3x and 6 minus 10 with negative 4. So now I'm going to use the addition property of equality to get rid of the 4. So negative 3x equals positive 15. And then I'm going to divide by negative 3, which is the same as dividing by or multiplying by negative 1/3. And I get x equals negative 5 as my solution. And that's the multiplication property. So I would expect that if you're in this class, you should be able to do those equations that we just did together very easily without much support. The next one's going to be a little bit more challenging. Okay, so now we've got some fractions, still some like terms that have to be put together. At this point, you guys should be able to work with fractions with ease. I want to know that you can do it without a calculator and some of that work in your head. So remember, when you're adding or subtracting fractions, you need a common denominator in order to do that. So I'm going to first rewrite my equation so that I have 3 halves as something over 4. So I can simply add or subtract those 2 fractions together. So to get 3 halves to something out of 4, I need to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 2. So I get negative 6/4 x plus 15 plus 7/4 x minus 27 equals 6. Now I can use the substitution property of equality to combine my fractions and my constants. Now, constants are the numbers without the x. We can call those fractions coefficients. The coefficient is always a number in front of a variable. So now when I add those, it's like doing 7 minus 6. So I get 1/4 x. Then 15 minus 27 is like doing 27 minus 15, but keeping the negative. So I get minus 12 equals 6. So here we use the substitution property of equality. Now I'm going to use the addition property to add 12 to both sides. I get 1/4 x equals 18. Then I'm going to multiply both sides by 4/1 or just 4 and get my final answer. 4 times 8 is 32, carry the 3. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 is 7. So my final answer is 72. Done. All right, so far so good. I think you guys can handle ones like that as well. I would hope so. And we are done with our problems for today that I'm going to do